Heaven is a culture. Oh, hi, I'm Curtis. Welcome to Life After Death. Heaven is a culture. Don't think about heaven as a place. I mean, like it is a place. It is a place in the afterlife, but it's only a place because of the culture that's in it. If you're wondering what I mean by culture, I have this friend. Her name is Merriam Webster. This is the definition of culture that she gives. There's two in here that I like. First, the characteristic features of everyday existence. What's a culture? It's like what characterizes everyday existence, such as diversions or a way of life shared by people in a place or time. So that's culture. And then also the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterizes an institution or an organization. In this case, it's the institution of heaven. So that's what I'm talking about when I say that heaven is a culture. The situation is this. That was nice. This is a map of reality, and you are here. This box that says the world, that's everything physical. So you could, not just the planet Earth, but if you took your James Webb telescope and pointed it in every direction you could possibly point it, as far as you can see, everything in there is still contained within this box that's the world. This is the entire physical universe here. But that universe is part of a larger spiritual universe that has whole other realms of reality in it. And if you were to travel out of the physical universe, let's say your spirit could leave your body and you ended up going along and getting to what we're calling the heavens, the first thing you would notice is that there are these amazing beings there. And these are people, and even some of them you could recognize, like you knew them in the world. Oh, there's Grandma. But the first thing you notice is just obvious that these are majorly upgraded beings. They just radiate out love. Like it hits you like a ton of love bricks when you see them. It's just that every quality that we aspire to and that we admire in people, wisdom, justice, temperance, strength, gentleness, all of that radiates out of these angels. They're constantly blasting out love and everything that goes with love. These would be the coolest people that you have ever met. And for what it's worth, they look amazing. They are beautifully, perfectly formed people. And these are what is called angels. Angels are the state in which you get when you're like that. And if you were to study these angels as they go about their days, because they do have days, if you could sit there and say, well, what's it like? I'm an anthropologist. What are you angels all about? Because they, even though they're so upgraded, they have things that they do that are comparable to what we do. So they have a day. They have a routine that they do. They have jobs and functions. They have tasks. They have relationships. They have somewhere that they live. So if you sat there and studied their life, and we're figuring out what is this all about? What do they really run on? Their life revolves around goodness, which is the impulse to do something constructive for someone, and then truth, which is the knowledge or the clarity that allows them to do those good things. Heaven is full of these amazing beings. And you would probably think, first of all, this is awesome. I love being here. I don't want to leave. You hear people who have modern near-death experiences and they say, I didn't want to leave. And you might think the reason why it's so great, why everything in heaven is amazing, is because it's full of angels. That's what makes heaven heaven. But the angels themselves actually have nothing to do with why heaven is heaven. They contribute zero to heaven being as great as it is. So what we're doing in this series, if we're going through this book, Heaven and Hell, which came from Emanuel Swedenborg doing exactly what I just talked about. He did travel while his body was still alive into heaven, got to study these angels, got to see what their life was like, what they're all about, and beyond that, why everything is like it is. And this is what he wrote about what actually makes heaven heaven. The amount angels accept from the Lord of what is good and what is true determines the extent to which they are angels and are heaven. So, new character, the Lord. Swedenborg calls him the Lord. People can call him God. I like the Lord. I don't know. I have affection for that term. So we've got the Lord. And somehow, everything cool that's going on with these angels, you trace it back to the Lord and their acceptance of the Lord. But how are you going to accept God? What does that mean? How do you check that box? Think about the sun. I'm talking about back in the physical world. Think about the sun. The sun radiates stuff. The sun is a stuff radiation machine. Hey, I should go for a PhD in that. What I'm talking about is light. The sun's shooting out light all the time. It's shooting out heat all the time. There are particles, solar winds, those things that make the northern lights. There's coronal mass ejections where it's throwing off material all the time. There is a lot coming out of the sun. The Lord is like the sun on the spiritual level, on the grander level. The Lord radiates out things as well. But these things are not light and heat, but the spiritual equivalent, which is goodness. So the Lord is constantly sending out goodness and truth into angels. So that stuff that I said their life revolves around, what makes them angels, that is constantly coming out of the Lord into them. And the reason they're so awesome and the reason that they're so happy and everything that comes with heaven is because they are open to accepting that when it comes out of the Lord. And notice in that quote that it says that they are angels to the extent that they accept it. Because it's not like God is focusing on them and saying, well, you got the rest of this whole map, but I'm sending all my good stuff here because those are my people. Those are my peeps, the angels there. No. God is love for every person that has ever existed and never will exist. And God, like the sun, just sends everything it's got everywhere. Every being that's ever existed has God radiating that love and truth to them. The difference is how you can become an angel is choosing to accept that inflow into you. Well, that sounds cool. How do you do that? How do you accept? How do you check that little box that says, yes, I would like goodness and truth from the Lord? Well, a major part of that acceptance, and what we're talking about today in this show, is acknowledging where it comes from. Acknowledging that the goodness and the truth in you comes from the Lord. Just being aligned with reality in that way is a major component of the culture of heaven. Because what I just told you a minute ago, that God is like the sun and that God radiates out love and truth, the most vital building blocks of life, to everyone, and you can be more and more in heaven to the extent that you accept it. That's kind of a secret. It's not supposed to be a secret. God is not trying to withhold it from anyone. But how many people, you take out your contacts list on your phone, how many people in there think that everything good in their heart and everything true in their mind radiates out of God, like the sun? Maybe some of them. Everybody that's chosen the culture that makes hell, which we'll get to in just a minute, they don't think that's true. Even people who, like myself, I've heard that concept, but I don't feel it. It's something I have to piece together. Only in heaven do you really get this truth tangibly. So part of the culture of heaven is this knowledge and this connection to the fact that everything that makes heaven heaven, everything that makes life good, comes from the divine. And it's not like that's just okay, there's a bouncer at the door and he says, hey, do you accept that everything comes from God? Yeah, I do. I'll accept that because I want to get in. Actually, the more that they acknowledge that connection, the deeper their joy is and the deeper their wisdom is. The more that they understand that the love that drives them and the truth that guides them are coming from God, the smarter and the happier they are. Swedenborg wrote, angels of the central heaven perceive and feel the inflow distinctly. They can just tell. So if I had angels here watching this show, and you may be one, sorry, no offense, they would say, if I said, guess what? All the goodness, all the love, and all the truth in human life is coming out of God into you right now. They'd be like, yeah, duh. I could feel that. I can feel that. It'd be like if somebody was pouring a bucket of water on your head, and you'd be like, guess what? Someone's pouring a bucket. I can feel it. I can just tell. Man, my analogies are on point. The more they accept, the more they seem to be in heaven, because they are more fully absorbed in love and faith, in the light and intelligence and wisdom, and in the heavenly joy that results. The point is joy. What's God all about? What is this love and this truth that God is sending out? The love is the impulse and the desire to bring joy and happiness and fullness and completeness to everyone, everywhere. And the wisdom is the knowledge of how we get there. And that is constantly spilling into these angels. And because they welcome that and accept it, they're in heaven. That's what heaven is. That's why in the Bible, it calls heaven the Lord's dwelling place. Heaven is where the Lord, what do you mean the Lord lives there? Is God in one part of creation, but not in another? He's like, this is my primary residence for tax purposes. I live in heaven. God's everywhere, but God lives in heaven because where God can really settle down is in us. And when people, that's the whole reason creation happened, was so that God could live inside people and by living inside them, make them happy. So where God is accepted, that's where God really lives. So God is in angels, and it also says in the Bible that angels are in the Lord because they are within the culture that the Lord's love and truth creates. That is what makes heaven heaven. You can just say heaven is the Lord, but the culture goes even deeper than that. It's not just that angels are aware that goodness and truth comes from God. It's not like they would say, man, I was having a bad morning. I was cranky. I was tripped over the dog's food bowl and spilled my coffee, and so I was mad for the whole morning. But at 11:45, I had a good thought, and I got an insight, so I knew that God showed up then, and I was connected to God. Every bit of not just life, but the ability to exist comes from God, from that radiance from God, and that in every single moment, not just, oh yeah, remember back when creation happened. Swedenborg wrote, everything endures in the same way too, because enduring is a constant coming into being. If anything were not kept in constant connection with the first, which is the Lord, through intermediate means, it would instantly collapse and disintegrate. Hey, are you collapsed and disintegrated? No? Well then, you're connected to God. God is right now flowing into you. And you can know that if you ever feel like, oh, where's God? He's not here. Well, if you exist, God is connected to you. They add that there is only one single wellspring of life, with human life as one stream flowing from it. If it were not constantly supplied from its wellspring, it would immediately peter out. So not only is God's life coming into all the angels in heaven, God's life is what's flowing into animals and making them live. It's what's flowing into us people here on earth. It's flowing into plants. Yeah, cacti have God's love and truth coming into them, which allows them to exist and live. And this is something that is a fundamental truth of life, and you can see it in other people's spiritual experiences. It's not just Swedenborg that saw this. There are people who have this same thing happen to them, where they're hanging out, living their life, some sort of accident or something puts their physical life at risk, and their spirit travels to heaven, and they go and see and talk with angels. There's a woman who's named Renelle Wallace, and she met her deceased grandmother in a near-death experience that she recorded, and they were together, hanging out in heaven, looking at this garden, this beautiful heavenly garden, and her grandmother, who was an angel, told her this: all this comes from God, and the power to sustain it comes from Him. It is the power of His love. Just as the plant life on earth needs soil, water, and light for nourishment, spiritual life needs love. All creation springs from God's love, and everything He creates has the capacity to love in turn. Light, truth, and life are all created in love and are sustained by love. So all of the life in this whole map, everything in the world, and I don't know if there's physical life elsewhere in the universe, it's there. Everybody who's in the world of spirits, which is this initial place that you go shortly after you've died, all the life there is from God. All the life in heaven is from God. And even people who are living the life that we call hell, their life is coming from God too. What determines where you are on this map is how you respond to / accept that love that comes. That's what makes your quality how it is. People who accept the goodness into their heart, meaning I feel this good impulse of what's right and I want to live by it, and then the truth into their minds. I think this is the right insight, I'm going to follow it, and use it in their lives to do constructive things. That's the recipe to become an angel. But if when that same impulse comes to us, we reject it or stifle it, I don't care about what is right and good, I don't care about the truth, and turn that vital life energy that we receive against God, meaning if God is the desire to make everyone happy forever, remember I said that? If you then take the life that's coming out of that love machine that is God and use it instead to hurt other people and make them miserable and enjoy that, that's turning the life that comes from God into what Swedenborg calls spiritual death. It's where you are living, sure, you're walking around and moving, but you're acting against what life's intent is. So that is what we call hell. Hell is hell because of the culture that it lives by, which is the direct opposite to the culture of heaven. There was a story that Swedenborg told about people who were living in the world and had in their hearts and minds the opposite culture to heaven. And in particular, they were opposed to this idea we're talking about today because they thought that they were the origin of goodness and truth, that I'm morally superior to people, I'm smarter than people, I am the good actor here, and had developed through a life based on that a really inflated picture of themselves and a feeling of superiority to their fellow human beings. And when they died, or I should just say the bodies they had died, their spirits are still alive. Your mind is your spirit. So the mind that they had cultivated, it was still the same. They still thought like that. And in the spiritual world, when you leave the physical, your thoughts are really present. They really radiate. We're like a mini little sun, just like the Lord is, but what we radiate, rather than being all love and all truth, is whatever we like to do and whatever we like to think about. So when these people tried to get into heaven, their thoughts, their self-focused thoughts, were so opposed to the culture of heaven that they couldn't participate. They couldn't fit in with the culture there because a central tenet of their life was, I'm what's great, and a central tenet of heaven is God is what's great. So until they could shed those thoughts, they couldn't be part of the culture that's heaven. Doesn't mean God doesn't love them. Doesn't mean God's not going to try to make them as happy as possible, but they can't do the heaven thing. That's different. You can't be in heaven with an inflated ego, because heaven, angels are the opposite of self-importance or ego. So much so that if you did go to heaven and you said, wow, you're so great, thank you for everything great that you do, they wouldn't like that. They don't want praise and credit for the good things that they do and the wisdom that they have, even though these would be on earth like the most accomplished, great people around, but they don't want you to say that they are great, because they know that it's not coming from them. They know that the goodness, the truth is coming from God. And if they were to start feeling like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm an angel, you're just some person, and look at how great I am, I've got this amazing life here, that would destroy their happiness. Because the culture that makes heaven is founded on, among other things, the belief that God is the source of goodness and truth. And they don't want it. The joys of ego and of believing that you're superior to other people, there's no appeal there to them, because the joy of heaven is so much more meaningful, so much more powerful. They wouldn't want it, and it's just obviously not true. And they don't want to delude themselves to feel superior to other people. Angels don't even think that doing something constructive or good is good if it's only done for your own sake, not for the sake of the mission. The mission being, again, we're trying to make everyone happy forever. This is what God does. God wants to send happiness to everyone. Heaven is people who say, I'm on board with that. I want to devote my life to bringing happiness to the entire human race. Everything that's truly good has to be coming from that source of goodness and contributing to it. So even if Angel was saying, oh, I want to do I got to take a vacation, or I got to recharge, do a spa day, get an angel pedicure, that would have to be with the intent still to recharge yourself so you can go back and contribute to the happiness of everyone. That's what goodness really is. And that goodness comes from the Lord. And it's who the Lord is. And it's that goodness, that burning desire in the heart of God to make everyone happy forever, that is what makes heaven what it is. And it's the acceptance of that intent that makes angels who they are. And it makes for this incredible life where you're deeply happy and deeply fulfilled and living the life that could only really be called heaven. Sounds great. Too bad we're stuck here in the world where there's nothing really going on. When you die, though, it could be good. I'm kidding. There's no reason why you can't do the heaven thing right now. Are you conscious? Can you think? Okay, that means that you have a spirit. The conscious part of you is your spirit. We have a physical body, but we also have a spirit as well that exists in this spiritual universe while our body exists in the physical universe. And the only thing you have to do to actually literally have your spirit be in heaven while your body's in the world, and for you to have some of the same experiences, is you just need to participate in the same culture while you're in the world. You can live the life that angels live while you're in this world. Actually, a person who has the culture of heaven inside them while they have a physical body in the world, you know what that's called? A church. Swedenborg says that is what the church is. Not a specific organization, not even a set of religious customs, but it fundamentally, those things can be useful as buttressing tools to it, but fundamentally, it is a person who is in the world while living and participating in the culture of heaven. So if we want to, we can be on earth open to this same perspective that all goodness, truth, and life are a gift to us from God. And if we're doing that, we have one major component of the culture of heaven inside of us. All you got to do is think like a branch. So, yeah. Let's look for a good branch here. All right, so let's say that this is you. This branch is doing a lot of cool stuff. This leaf is photosynthesizing. It is converting light into energy, which does a lot of good. And this branch would not be anything if it wasn't connected to the vine that it's coming out of. Because all of the water that it gets comes from this vine. All of the nutrients, even the original material to create it, the energy, it all comes through here. So yes, the branch is great. And the branch is just inextricably one with the vine. And that is how they do amazing things together. This is you, this is God. You are as bound together in that, sure, we can talk about you as two, but there's one life that's coming through. We derive our life from the vine. Where have I heard that before? The vine. The vine. Oh, yeah, right. There's this very famous statement by Jesus in John 15, "Abide in me, and I will abide in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me, and I in them, will bear much fruit, because without me you can do nothing." What are we talking about abiding? Abiding is an old-timey word for living. So this is talking about the people that are in heaven. You live in the Lord by living in this state of heaven, and part of the state of heaven is acknowledging that God is the vine and we're the branches. What's the fruit? What fruit are we bearing? Happiness and love and doing good for other people. You don't have to abide in the Lord. You don't have to. You can shut out that impulse to do what's right and good. You can go and pursue materialistic, ego-driven things, sure, but it's not going to bear fruit. You're ultimately not going to be happy. You're not going to be making other people happy. We're not going to be contributing to the welfare of all. That's what it's talking about. Abide in me. That's the vine. This reality of our dependence on the divine is like one of the main points in not just Christianity, but every world religion, just about. If you don't believe me, here's a couple examples. He is the one God, hidden in all beings, all-pervading, the self within all beings, watching over all works, dwelling in all beings, the witness, the perceiver, the only one. When all appearances and names are put away and all discrimination ceases, that which remains is the true and essential nature of things. This universal, inscrutable suchness is the only reality. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light, we see light. In primal time, in all time, was the Creator. Nothing is real but the eternal. Nothing shall last but the eternal. Infinitely the creation receives from him sustenance. Divinity is that which was there before the appearance of heaven and earth. Divinity is the root origin of heaven and earth, the spiritual nature of all things, and the source of human destiny. Okay, all right. Why are you so obsessed with telling me this? Because that is how you get into heaven. I mean, that is a major part of heaven, is understanding what you are, what life is, that we are not an isolated thing, that we're not isolated from each other, we're not isolated from God. There is this oneness, and it's centered around God's love, which is a desire to do good to all the time. Swedenborg closes this chapter that we're going through today in his book, Heaven and Hell, with this. This allows us finally to conclude that the Lord dwells in angels in what belongs to himself. Therefore, that the Lord is the sum and substance of heaven. This is because the goodness from the Lord is the Lord within and among them, since what comes from him is himself. Accordingly, the goodness from the Lord, and not anything of their own, is heaven for angels. God sends out love and the truth that leads us to love. If we open up to that, if we accept it into us, God is living within us. And when God lives within us, God does what God wants to do, which is bless us with everything. Give us everything that's good. So make us as happy as possible. Do everything to make us thrive. Heaven is the state you get in when you open up to God, and God creates this amazing life for you and within you. And what this does, the understanding in angels that, God is the man. God is the one doing all this. It creates in them a living belief that they're not better than anyone else. Despite how awesome they become and how much they have everything that we all want, doesn't matter how high they go, they don't believe they're better than anyone because they can tell that this is the Lord. One angel doesn't believe that they're better than the next angel. All angels don't believe they're better than the people in the world of spirits, even people who are living the life that is called hell. Angels don't look down on them and say, look at you, I'm so good, I'm in heaven, what are you doing wasting your life? All they feel is God's love and impulse to make everyone happy. So there's no ego. When you have this belief, when you have the belief that the goodness and the truth comes from God, you can be given amazing things and it doesn't inflate your ego. That is the miracle or the magic trick that this is. By understanding that reality, we can experience great joy and amazing things and not have it puff us up and get us to look down on our fellow human beings. So there's no limit then to the happiness that can be placed in our life without it, and it won't do us any harm. That is a state that we can be cultivating inside of ourselves right now. The culture of heaven can exist here on earth if we want to accept it. It can exist in your heart, and when enough of us accept that and start living by it, the heaven and earth thing could very, very literally be possible. And what makes heaven is just simply us opening up and inviting God to come in, hang out, and do what he wants to do, which is make everyone happy forever.